Good morning. Good morning. Morning, Addison. Morning, everybody. Oh, let me get back to my screen there. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. If you're just joining, go ahead and get Canvas open because I'm going to do a quick review of intro stuff. We got a few new students, and then we're going to start Module 7, Lesson 1 today. So if you have Canvas open, that will definitely help things go a little bit faster. So when I say have Canvas open, I mean go to the home page of our course. Okay, so you select our course, and you can just be there on the home page. Okay, so we'll get to that in about 10 minutes. I'll do a quick overview of intro stuff, and then we'll get started. So good morning. Good morning. Hope everybody's having a great day. Almost through our first week back. Yay. I'll give it about another minute, and then we'll get started. Good morning, Missy. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Recording is taking place, huh?
Yeah, I either do this one or I've been doing my 5th, but then I keep forgetting. So like, but it doesn't show anybody's tiles or anything like that. It just does the screen I'm presenting.
Perfect.
So, but okay. that way I can put it on the live session page. So because the other teacher I was getting them from, her lessons are, I think, are a little bit more different than mine, or just a little more varied than mine. So I'm going to start recording more of mine.
I think I'm going to start doing this too, because I've been teaching and then recording separately, and this is just so much easier.
Yeah, as long as you stay, the key is that I found is as long as you stay in presentation mode and you stay in the tab mode, it won't show anybody else's tiles.
Okay.
I mean, like it does the voice, but like that doesn't give anybody's idea.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show the chat. Yeah, it just shows the screen that you're on. So as long as you stay in that mode, which I've gotten good at. So at first I was uncomfortable with it because sometimes I would accidentally pop out of it and then there's everybody, you know, and stuff. But I'm pretty good about it now. So
cool.
Yeah. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right?
we need the time. We need to make up time.
Who has time to do another 45-minute lesson? I don't. So
yep.
All right, everybody, we'll get started. I hope you're having a really good day. And if you are new, welcome. I'm going to, yesterday I went over some intro stuff. I let you go early so that you could get those intro, the module 0 and the intro module done. It only takes like 10 minutes, and that's probably being generous, right? You know, it doesn't really take that long because it's kind of the same for each class. So I am going to take a minute. I want to just review some of those things. If this is your first time in class, it's good morning. If this is your first time in class or anything like that, that we're on the same page. If you have any questions, I'm happy to stay after class for a few minutes because it's lunchtime. If you have any questions, I'm also, myself and Missy are available tomorrow during small group. If you want to come and ask any more questions or anything like that, we can help you. Okay. So again, I am Mrs. Hall, Miss C, and welcome. And we're really excited to do second semester government. All right. So what standards are we going to be going over in this lesson today? We're going to be looking at civil rights and civil liberties, okay? We're actually going to be kind of looking at the difference. We're going to be focusing on civil rights today and on Monday, and then end of next week looking at civil liberties. Oftentimes people will use those two terms interchangeably, but they are actually different, okay? So we're going to define what those are and then look a little bit at civil rights and look a little bit at civil liberties next week. U.S. history, you definitely got into this more in detail. You looked at the movements, you looked at the important people and the events. We're going to be looking at it more from the legislative side, so the government side. So what bills, laws, amendments contributed or changed throughout civil rights and civil liberties. So we're not going to go as in depth as U.S. history, and we're going to be looking at it more from the courts side of these movements and changes. So it's looking at state versus federal government, who has authority and who defines our civil rights or civil liberties. We're going to look at some of the instances of, discrimination or the push for or the struggle for equity, equity, respect, and to change legislation or laws in particular that are discriminatory or that keep people out or segregate people, right? And how those have been changed and how we're continuing to try to make those changes. So a few housekeeping things. Like I said, I was going to do a quick review. Okay. When there are due dates, after the due date turns, then your assignment goes in at 50% if you did not submit the assignment. Okay, so when you go to Canvas and you go to grades, it'll show as missing. But for credit in the book, what that means is 50%. Now, you can replace that grade, right, by submitting the assignment or completing the assignment. Now, you get the grade that you get. If you don't like the grade that you get, then you can resubmit it as long as it's before the closing deadline. Okay. All due dates are on Tuesdays and Fridays. So we meet Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we'll cover stuff on Monday that's due Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that's due Friday. So the goal is that what we're doing in the live session is we're covering things and helping you complete assignments that are due for that next due date. So every Tuesday, Friday are due dates. That pacing guide is on the homepage. So we talked about this yesterday. So if you want to see the pacing guide of all the due dates, it's there for the semester right there on the homepage. Best way to message me is probably email. Okay, you're going to get the fastest response. You can message through Canvas, but just know that that can take up to 24 hours. So message me. Email is probably the fastest way to do that. And again, that is listed on the homepage right here. Okay. And then Miss Carter, she'll add her information, or sorry, not Miss Carter, Miss D will add her information. Sorry, I think last period will add her information. It's if you want to get in touch with either of us. Okay. It also lists our classroom information and when we have small groups. So Tuesday when there's small group, Friday when there's small group, and the code. All right. So that you can, and remember, you're welcome to join in anytime. It doesn't have to be during your specific period. All right, let's keep going. Attendance. So you get attendance on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday by coming to class. Okay. And then on Tuesdays and Fridays by completing the attendance assignment. All right. So live session days, you got to come to class, be in class for at least 30 minutes. And then Tuesdays and Fridays, you have that 24-hour period from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. to fill out the attendance form. All assignments, there's the due date and then they're open for an additional 7 days. Projects I've left open for 14 days. Okay. So you need to get them in by that deadline. Okay. So I'd like them to be in on the due date, but if you don't get it on the due date, you have that 1 week window that you can get assignments in. Classroom behavior, making sure that we're coming to class, we're being respectful, myself and Ms. C always being respectful and you being respectful back toward one another. This also includes digital communication, so any emails you send or things like that, making sure that we're being appropriate and stuff. Believe me, you're going to get a lot more out of people when you are kind and use an appropriate tone, right, than when you're rude. When we're rude, it kind of puts our defenses up and then people are less likely to want to help us out. All right, so especially if you're asking for a favor, kill it with kindness. All right, and stuff. Pacing. Best thing you can do to be successful in this class is stay on pace. So that means not just coming to class, but submitting your assignments. All right. The assignments I'm working on with you, that me and Miss C are working on with you, complete them and stay with the pace, because waiting, yes, of course you're going to be overwhelmed. And that's because you didn't stay with the pace. Okay. So attendance again, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, you got to come to class. Tuesday, Fridays, you fill out that attendance form. So that attendance form can be found if you go to modules. You're going to scroll all the way to the bottom of the modules. Okay. So all the way past module 11, final exam, and you're going to see the attendance assignments. Okay. And you're going to go to that day's date and you're going to click on it. So for example, tomorrow's attendance, it opens at 12 a.m. It closes at 12:59. And all you got to do is answer those 2 questions and you submit it. It takes 30 seconds, not even that. Okay. And that counts for your attendance on Friday. So every Tuesday, Friday, that's what you do. Now, if you're a scholar, okay, if you're a scholar, then you fill out a separate attendance, but only if you're in the scholar program. So if you're not in the scholar program, this is the attendance you fill out on Tuesdays and Fridays. Come to class Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you're a scholar, then you fill out your attendance, and it's every Monday and it counts for the week, right? So if you're in the scholar program, you're still welcome to come to class, but you have to fill out the scholar attendance. Now, if you are not in the scholar program and you fill out the scholar attendance, I will not count that for attendance, okay? It has to be the attendance assignment, okay? So if you're in the scholar program, only fill out scholar attendance. If you're not in the scholar program, that just fill out the attendance assignment. Ignore the scholar attendance, okay? So please make sure that you're doing that correct one. All right, so the same as we did last semester. 7-day rule on late work, like I said, so assignment is due and then it's open for an additional 7 days, okay? So get that in. You can turn it in without being deducted as long as you complete the assignment, okay? End of the semester is May 15th. That will be the end of our semester for collecting work. And then final exams are the 16th, 17th, and 18th. All right. So just if you're counting down the days, you're one of those seniors that's already got your eyes on walking across the stage and being done. You got to get past the 18th and then you'll be there. All right. Behavior, like I said, be respectful. Be respectful toward us. We're respectful toward you, toward one another. Super important. And please participate. All right. It obviously makes class a lot more fun if people are participating. All right, let's get started. Let's do something a little bit interesting. What is one place you would love to visit if money was no object? If money was no object and you could just go there, where would you want to visit? Type it in the chat or you're welcome to unmute. China, very cool. Where in China? China's huge. China's so big. Where in China, Angela?
I would want to go to Beijing, China.
Ooh, okay.
Because I want to see the Temple of Heaven and
Nice.
the Great Wall and all of that.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Cuba, I would actually love to go to Cuba. I've heard it's like a time capsule as far as going to some of the cities and stuff like that. Unfortunately, a lot of that's due to oppression because of the government and things like that. But I've heard it's beautiful, and a couple friends have visited in the last few years, and they said it was just absolutely amazing. And the people there are so nice. Greece, oh my gosh, yes. Wouldn't that be amazing? Seeing the sites, Athens and things like that. I would love to go see some of the historic sites and the food. England, okay, very cool. A lot of history. Romania, Dubai. Did you know Dubai is one of the most diverse cities in the world? All right. They have actually more foreign population than they do native population there. Except Japan. All right. Very cool. Talk about another place that has some amazing sites, culture, and history. Romania. A couple of people like Romania. Okay. Ireland. I've been to Ireland. It is amazing. I went during the rainy season, very cold and damp, but it is beautiful there. Talk about green. All right. Scotland. Oh, that would be amazing. I didn't make it to Scotland, but really beautiful. Cool. New Zealand. I would love to go there too. In New Zealand, Australia, I'd love to do that kind of as like a dual trip. I think that would be really cool. Gorgeous there. You know, they film parts of like Jurassic Park and things. Jurassic Park and what other movie? Is it Lord of the Rings? There was a couple movies.
Yeah, it was Lord of the Rings.
Was it Lord of the Rings? Okay, and then maybe The Hobbit too. There's a couple like their hillsides and stuff like that is very, very amazing. Alaska would be cool. Australia, yes. All right, very cool. You guys want to go some really cool places. I've heard really diverse places today. It's really cool to hear where you want to go. Miss C will probably agree with me on this. Here's my biggest recommendation. Go when you're younger if you can, because as life goes on, it gets more expensive and more complicated and stuff. It's harder to get there. So I'm glad I did some traveling in my 20s. And as I got older and I had a family and things like that, more money to do it, but less time. And it just seems to be harder to like coordinate. So I encourage you, if you can do some of these trips in your, when you get out of high school, early 20s, things like that, when life is less complicated, less responsibilities, I think it can be, I did some trips in my early 20s and I wish I had done more. I I know it takes a lot to save.
I don't agree. I'm on the opposite.
Invest when
you're younger. Yeah. I invested everything that I could when I was younger, and now I'm starting to take trips. So
that's cool. I did not like huge international trips, but just, I don't know. I did like Canada. We went down to South America and I'm really glad that I did it. So what mountain range, Colorado's that ends the Rockies? Is that the one you're talking about, Addison? Yes. Okay. The Rocky Mountains and stuff. So, well, I definitely encourage you if you're going to have kids, before you have kids, get some traveling in. So
that's fair. I still don't have kids. So
it gets harder. I can do short. I'm about on the 5-hour limit. Like if the flight's more than 5 hours, I'm like, nope. So they're still too young. There's a bunch of trips I want to do when they get like middle school, when we can do like the 10-15-hour flights, when you're crossing massive oceans and stuff. and stuff. Cool. Well, I
It just
love
only fits for a long time. It gives you a lot of freedom.
it. Does. It's, it's kind of that double-edged sword because it's like,
is.
it's like because you wait and then they push in, but then I agree, you have them too young, then I don't know if there's a perfect way to do it. It's a hard, but I do encourage you to get a few things off your bucket list before if you can, and stuff like that, because they definitely tie you down more or they limit you more. They're the best thing ever, but they do limit you. That's, I think, a fair way to say it. You know what I mean? They're a great thing, but you can't just pick up and go. It's a little bit
And
hard.
they sleep deprive you, right? That happens.
That is true. That is true. That is true. I will never sleep the same. I will, every little sound, I'm like, too. You don't sleep soundly anymore. All right. Let's get into civil rights versus civil liberties. Okay. So civil rights versus civil liberties. I do encourage you, try to take at least one big trip. All right. One big trip before you get into your career or school or, or during all that and stuff. So maybe you can't do lots of trips, but try to get something done, because it is really great to go out and see the world and realize that not everything is the way that we do it, or it's great to see the world through another point of view. I will say that. And seeing multiple point of views is really eye-opening and humbling. It's very humbling too. All right, civil rights versus civil liberties. So we're going to watch the quick crash course. He does a good job of kind of breaking down what is the difference. Civil rights are laws or things that the government does to protect us. So it's when the government is protecting us. So civil rights are things that the government does, so laws or legislation to protect us. Civil liberties are protections from the government. So from the government overreaching, into our freedoms and suppressing us too much. So there is a difference. And sometimes people use these interchangeably. And the reality is that they are actually kind of opposite. So one is the government promoting our rights and protecting us. And then one is protecting us from the government overreach, and infringing on our rights. So they are very different. So let's watch this quick video on the difference.
Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Government and Politics, and today we're finally, at long last, moving on from the structures and branches of government and onto the structures and branches of trees. This is a nature show now. Okay, we're not moving on completely because we're still talking about courts, but today we'll be discussing actual court decisions and the kinds of things that courts rule on rather than how they do it. That's right, we're moving on to civil rights and civil liberties. Okay, first I want to talk about something that I find confusing, the difference between civil rights and civil liberties. Usually in America we use the terms interchangeably, which adds to the confusion, but lawyers and political scientists draw a distinction, so you should know about it. Then you can go back to calling civil liberties rights and civil rights liberties, and most people won't care. But I'll care. I'll be disappointed in you. So civil liberties are limitations placed on the government. Basically, there are things the government can't do that might interfere with your personal freedom. Civil rights are curbs on the power of majorities to make decisions that would benefit some at the expense of others. Basically, civil rights are guarantees of equal citizenship, and they mean that citizens are protected from discrimination by majorities. Take, for example, same-sex marriage. You could think of it as a liberty, except that not everyone is free to marry at any given time. 6-year-olds can't get married, and you can't marry your sibling. But same-sex marriage is a civil rights issue because in the states that don't allow it, the majority of voters is denying something to a minority, creating inequality in the way that the laws work. Now, just to make things more confusing, lawyers often talk about the difference between substantive and procedural liberties, but they usually call them rights instead of liberties. It's a lawyer eagle. A legal eagle. Substantive liberties are limits on what the government can do. For example, the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law establishing religion. So this means that they cannot create a national church or declare that Christianity or Islam or Hinduism is the official religion of the U.S. Procedural liberties are limits on how the government can act. For example, in America, in courtroom dramas, there's a presumption that someone is innocent until proven guilty. This presumption means that in criminal cases, juries and judges have to act as though the accused is innocent until the prosecution convinces them otherwise. If they are not convinced, the accused person doesn't go to prison. So now that we understand the difference between civil rights and civil liberties perfectly because of my amazing explanation, let's focus on the liberties and try to figure out what they are and where they come from, with some help from Thought Bubble. So civil liberties are contained in the incredibly unhelpfully named Bill of Rights, which isn't even called that in the Constitution. It's just the name we give to the first 10 amendments. The 9th Amendment is included to remind us that the list of liberties and or rights in the other amendments isn't exhaustive. There might be other rights out there, but the Constitution doesn't specifically say what they are. Thanks, Constitution. In some cases, it's pretty clear. The First Amendment, for example, says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or abridging the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or to assemble or to infringe the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Pretty straightforward. But other cases are not so clear. The Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, but it doesn't say by whom. Same thing with the Fifth Amendment guarantees against self-incrimination. Could Congress force you to incriminate yourself? How would they do that? And the Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishments, like presumably shock pens. But it doesn't say who is forbidden from cruelly and unusually punishing. My mom wasn't forbidden from keeping me from playing video games. As usual, we might expect the Supreme Court to sort out this mess, but initially they were no help at all. In a case you've probably never heard of called Barron versus Baltimore, decided in 1833, the court said that the Bill of Rights applied to the national, meaning federal government, not to the states. They said that every American has dual citizenship, but not the good kind. They meant that you are a citizen of the U.S. and of the state in which you reside, and basically that the Constitution only protected you from the federal government. In other words, if the state of Indiana wanted to punish me cruelly or unusually, they could. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So Barron versus Baltimore left Americans in a bit of a civil liberties pickle. And not the good kind of pickle. They were protected from the national government doing terrible things like quartering troops in their homes, but not from the state doing the same thing. And since the state was close to home and the national government was far away and compared with today, tiny and weak, these protections were pretty weak sauce. So what happened to change this? I hope something, because I like a zesty government sauce. The 14th Amendment and the Supreme Court happened. After the Civil War, as part of Reconstruction, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were added to the Constitution. Of these, the 14th is the most important, probably the most important of all amendments. What does it say? Well, the first section, which is the one that really matters, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, okay? It reads, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." What this means is that the federal government's like, listen, states, you can't be dumb. Just stop it, okay? We're all in this together, all right? It means states can't deny equal protection, civil rights, or due process, which in this case encompasses civil liberties. This, in theory, makes it impossible for states to infringe upon the liberties in the Bill of Rights. But the legal system being what it is, it's not quite that simple. Did you think it'd be simple? The Supreme Court could have just ruled that all the rights and liberties in the Bill of Rights applied to the states, which seems to be what the 14th Amendment implies, but they didn't. Instead, they ruled that each of the rights or liberties had to be incorporated against the states on a case-by-case basis. This is a concept called selective incorporation, and it supposedly reserves more power to the states. What it really means is that when people felt that the states were violating their liberties, they had to go to the Supreme Court, which by now has incorporated almost every clause in the Bill of Rights against the states. You want examples? We got them. In the famous case of Gitlow versus New York, the court ruled that the First Amendment protection of freedom of speech could not be violated by a state. In this case, it was New York, but once a liberty is incorporated against one state, it's incorporated against all of them. In Mapp versus Ohio, the court ruled that states couldn't use evidence gathered from warrantless searches. In Benton versus Maryland, the right against double jeopardy, being tried for the same crime twice, was incorporated against the states. By now, almost all the rights and liberties mentioned in the first 10 amendments have been incorporated against the states. This means that individuals are protected from all their governments taking away their liberties. And that's a good thing. I love my liberties. So we'll be talking about civil rights and civil liberties for a number of episodes, and this topic, while confusing, can be lots of fun. We might play liberties bingo or civil rights kickball. I don't know what those things are, but they sound like fun. The main thing to remember is that going all the way back to the framers, Americans have been concerned about a too powerful government taking away citizens' freedoms. Yes, these liberties apply mostly to citizens, although some do apply to non-citizens too. In order to put limits on government, the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution in 1789. But this didn't mean that those limits applied to the states, probably because the founders expected states to be the main protectors of rights. And in fact, many state constitutions have provisions that copy or in some ways go beyond what's in the U.S. Constitution. Only after the 14th Amendment was passed following the Civil War did the national government get around to addressing this issue of states denying people's liberties. Even then, it took numerous court cases for us to get to the point that most of the liberties that we assume cannot be taken away by the government have actually been guaranteed through the process of selective incorporation. It's taken a long time to get where we are, and there's still a long way to go. Protecting civil liberties requires vigilant citizens to be aware of the ways their government is overstepping its bounds. But that's only half the equation. It's also vital that our majority pay attention to the civil rights of others, and that we ensure that everyone is afforded the same protections and benefits promised by our system of law. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Okay, I know that was a lot, all right. But I think what's really good about the key distinction that he's making is, again, civil rights versus civil liberties, okay? So even the Bill of Rights, we should almost call it Bill of Liberties, okay? Because it really is, if you think about it, a list, 10, right? The first 10 amendments of the Constitution that we've talked about. So how does that play into civil rights, civil liberties? it is a list of 10, descriptive amendments that are to protect us from government overreach. So really one good example would be unlawful search and seizure, right? That police have to have a warrant, in order to search our homes or something. Right to no double jeopardy. So you can't be tried for the same crime twice. So these are just one example of protections for us against the government overreaching their power or infringing on our rights. Okay. Civil rights are going to be passages of legislation or amendments that support or protect people. Okay, so for an example, Brown versus Board of Education, making it really clear that segregation is unlawful on any state level. Okay, so that the federal government is mandating to the states, so protecting people from states coming in and continuing to try to segregate, like we saw in the 1960s. All right, so this clear distinction kind of the two. So one is laws or legislation that protects us from the overreach of the government. And then the other one is where the government kind of comes behind us and is protecting us from society. All right. And societal norms or things that might be going on. Some other examples, and as he stated, the 14th Amendment is probably one of the most impactful amendments that helps towards civil rights, okay? Making it really clear that who should be a citizen of this country. And it says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, okay? And so further clarifying the Bill of Rights when it comes to trying to reduce discrimination for all people, okay? For all people. And stuff. So libel versus slander. So what we'll see sometimes is when people are speaking out, or if we see discrimination can happen in many different forms. So libel discrimination or slander is going to be in written form. So if I post something that's really disparaging or rude or mean, maybe on social media, if I send an email or something like that, that can be libel discrimination. Slander, that can be oral. So anything that's said. So if I say something, maybe a racist comment, I use a bad term, something like that. So if I'm verbally saying that, okay, so it could be in a conversation, it could be in a phone call, it could be even on this platform, that would be considered slander discrimination. Commercial speech is going to be the platform that you're on. So actually, this would kind of be two things. So I, as a teacher, this would be a commercial platform, right? I'm in a role and I'm speaking to you. And let's say I said something really inappropriate. That could be slander discrimination on a commercial platform. You know what I mean? And so sometimes they can kind of overlap. So if I'm in an official capacity, commercial platform or commercial speech. And oftentimes my commercial speech is more limited, right, than my personal speech. So when I'm just out an everyday citizen, I'm going to have more freedoms to say things than when I have my teacher cap on, I have to be a lot more careful some of the things that I say, so commercial speech is going to be a little bit more limited. So if that was an organization, maybe a company, we see companies all the time get in trouble, maybe for something they say or an ad campaign or something like that, that would kind of go into commercial speech. Free exercise clause. So this is dealing with religion. All right. So there's kind of two protections you have from religion. You have protection to practice religion and you have protection from religion. So you have protection for and from religion. In our country, we are not, it is written into our Constitution that we are not to be mandated to practice any one religion. Our government is not to embrace any one religion. We don't have an official religion. But also with that, we are not discriminated from practicing any number of religions. Okay. As long as that religion is not harming others or animals, we're good. So if my religion involved, some kind of animal sacrifice or something like that, that's probably going to get me in trouble. All right. So there are limitations on that. But as long as my practice of religion, I know that's an extreme example, but, still to make it clear, as long as my practice of that religion isn't harming others or my freedom that maybe I don't want to practice a religion, I can't be persecuted for that. Symbolic speech. So symbolic speech can be several different things. Kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance, that's symbolic speech. Standing and putting your hand over your heart for the Pledge of Allegiance, that's symbolic speech. Burning of the flag, that's symbolic speech. So we have certain protections that we can't be forced to, let's say, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and stuff, or we can't be harmed for doing that. Okay. So symbolic speech is, protest or support of something and in a symbolic gesture or way. And then media is pretty self-explanatory. So that's going to be like social media or, news outlets or a magazine or, TV articles or things that you watch or you read. So a commitment to freedom is important, all right? So what our government really tried to set out to do was to make it really clear in our founding documents what those freedoms were going to be. And they started, the first freedoms that were laid out were in the Bill of Rights. And then over time, they've had to add and amend that to be clear. All right. So the Bill of Rights was just the starting point. And then things like the 13th, 14th Amendment, the Civil Rights Voting Act in 1964 is another example. Many court decisions like Brown versus Board of Education, things like that, are going to be examples of court cases that further move or define or reduce discrimination through civil rights and civil liberties. So again, what is the difference? Civil liberties is protection against government. So protection from the government overreaching in your life. So the examples I gave were maybe like you have to have a warrant in order to search someone's home. I can't be tried for the same crime twice. So if I was tried for robbery and I was found innocent, they can't try to try me again. Like, oh, we got more evidence, let's do it again. No, I'm protected from double jeopardy. Okay. But also civil rights is acts by government to protect us. So for example, I kind of go back to the same examples, but just to try to hone this in on, Brown versus Board of Education. So desegregating schools, all right? So where the government mandated that states didn't have the right to decide whether or not their schools could be segregated, that all schools were to be desegregated. So the government putting forth a mandate to reduce or to remove discrimination. So they come in both forms. Now, there are limits to this. People all the time love to see this. My husband sees this all the time in law enforcement stuff, or Addison, as you're kind of maybe pointing out a little bit. People love to quote their First Amendment rights, or their bill, like, I can do it. I can say what I want. I can do it. It's my freedom of speech. No, there are limits on your freedom of speech. We have freedom, but within boundaries. I can't just say whatever I want. Certainly as a teacher, I can't just say whatever I want, but even as a free citizen, I can't just say whatever I want. I can't just go outside and say, I'm going to shoot up my neighborhood. I can't do that because I'm harming others or I'm threatening others. So there are limits on our freedom of speech. If you're threatening someone else, if you're harm to someone else, discrimination toward other people, there are limits on our freedom. So sometimes we love to kind of overquote our freedoms and think that that gives us the right to do anything that I want. No, there are boundaries. The analogy I like to give, it's like a cow. Okay. If we're all cows, we have freedom, but within the pasture, the pasture, the fences keep them from, so they get to roam, but within their fences. We have freedoms, but we do have fences. There are limitations. We don't just have absolute freedom. Okay, that would be that would be basically no existence of government. All right, that would be kind of tyranny in some ways. All right, and stuff. With religion, this is important. Again, we have freedom of religion. We have freedom from religion and for religion, but again, within limitations, right? I can't just do anything I want. I can't harm others. I can't go kidnap people and bring them into my religion and say, you have to practice this. So we have freedom not to practice religion, or we have freedom to practice religion and not be discriminated for that. So before we get into our day summary, we're going to jump in and we're going to start our notebook and course arc, and then we're going to get into more specific examples through time, legislation, and movements on Monday that are examples of the civil rights movement. And the best analogy I like to give you is that it's not a destination, it's actually a journey. I don't know that we're ever really done. The work is never done because what worked 100 years ago doesn't work today. We're forever evolving. We're forever changing. Our culture, our definition of morality, and what we define as discrimination is in some ways moving through times and has to be readjusted. So in some ways, you want to look at civil rights and civil liberties. It will never really be done with that. It's a process. It's a journey through life, and we have to always be willing to reassess and reevaluate. Are these changes hurting people? Are they helping people? And reevaluating different groups of society to make sure that they aren't forgotten. Okay. All right. So let's go over into Canvas. So if you haven't already, get this open. Okay. And while you're doing that, I just want to show you really quick or remind you of the announcements. And stuff. So make sure every Tuesday and Friday that you're going into the announcements and you're checking those. All right, so once we're in Canvas, we're going to go to modules. And for tomorrow, you need to get module 0 done. Okay, so it's going to be honor lock and the acknowledgement quiz. And then in the intro module, we need to make sure that we have the intro to online learning quiz done. So those 3 things need to be done, and you want to click on each page. And we're going to scroll down. I have live session pages that I post every week. So if you're with me last semester, you know this. So this is where you can go to get PowerPoint. So there's the PowerPoint from yesterday, the PowerPoint from today, the link to our review sheet for next week, tells you what's due, okay, on those certain days, on the small group days. And then this is where I will post the video from today. So if you want to play back or look at anything. And I do this for every single week. All right. So we're going to go past the live session page and we're going to be in module 7. All right. And we're going to click on the module 7 overview page. So on the overview page, it just tells us what we're going to be covering in that module and then how many lessons are within that. So there's 2 lessons within this module. Okay. And we're going to be looking at the civil rights lesson today and Monday, which is due on Tuesday. And then we'll look on Wednesday and Thursday at lesson 2, civil liberties. And we're going to click on the next page. So once we're on this page, we are going to click on the notebook because we're going to be completing our notebook while we complete our course arc today. All right, so we're going to make a copy. And once it's open, there's a couple things you need to do. So we're going to change the heading. Okay, and I like to just leave the main heading in there, or you could put your name in there, whatever you want, but we're going to label it. Then we're going to save it on our Google Drive, all right? And if you don't already have a government folder, you can create a government folder by clicking new folder and then move it here, save it there so that when we come back to it on Monday, or if you want to work on it this weekend, then you know where to go and find your notebook. So save it on your Google Drive, and then we're going to make it shareable, all right? So we go down here and we click on anyone with the link. So general access and make sure anyone with the link, and we put done. You don't need to invite myself or Miss C to edit it. Okay, this is just so when you submit it that I'm able to open it. All right, so when you submit it that I can open the link. Okay, so we're changing the heading, saving to the Google Drive, and making it shareable. Okay, once you have that open, we're going to go back over into Canvas and we're going to click next and we're going to open up the course arc. Okay, so the course arc is the program, right, that we complete while we're doing our notebook. So the course arc has our content and our lesson, and then the notebook is the extension work of vocab and higher level thinking questions that builds off the course arc. So we're going to click on the blue button. And once you click on that, it's going to open up and it's going to take you to this overview page. So you want to have the course arc open and your notebook open. Okay, so those 2 things open. Once you have those open, go ahead in the chat and give me a ready. Oops. So give me a ready when you have both open, course arc and the notebook. So course arc open and then the notebook open. Okay, give another minute or 2, get a few more people. Please write ready in the chat when you're ready.
I don't know about where you're at, but it's raining hard here.
Yeah, it just started. It just
Yeah.
hit my house. It was showing on the radar like this afternoon, but honestly, I mean, when I dropped my kids off this morning, it was looking like it wanted to rain. So
Yeah, it's not pretty out there.
no, it's. I mean, yesterday even it was kind of. So I'm glad. Like it's like if you're gonna be overcast, do something, you know. So
Just get it over with. Wash my car. Go ahead.
guys, bring me back my son. So, all right, let's get started. So when we're in the course arc, okay, it's going to give us our overview page. It's going to tell us what the lesson's about. It gives us our standards. It tells us, we're going to look at some of the history in our founding documents in the Constitution, amendments and laws that help support and guide the progression of civil rights and civil liberties and reducing discrimination. All right. If we scroll down, it just gives us an overview of each page. Okay. And we're going to click on the introduction tab. So on the navigation side, you can click on which page you want to go to. So we're going to be on the introduction page. And we're going to scroll down, and it's basically going to tell us that the first document laying out the first civil rights, civil liberties, okay, which is a progression and change. But the first document to really address this is going to be in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, right? So the Bill of Rights was laying out basically liberties that we have or protections we have from government overreach, all right? And then over time, this has been added to and changed to address different groups and people and movements that are not being acknowledged. Their rights and their liberties are not being acknowledged. So the essential question that we're going to answer is, do equal rights have equal justice under the law? Okay, so you can Control C or you can right click and copy it. And then we're going to go over to our notebook and we're going to put this in number 1 of our notebook. And I will put this in the chat. So if you want to copy and paste that over, you're welcome to do that. So you can copy and paste it from the chat, put it in number 1, or you can pull it from the essential question and you can copy and paste it over into your notebook in number 1 right here. And you can literally just right click, paste. The way you always know that you're corresponding with the notebook is at the bottom of each page of the course arc. It'll tell you where in the notebook or what question you should be working on. So here it says U.S. government, entry number 1, essential question. So we just did that. Then we're going to click here and we're going to go to the vocab page. So we're going to click on our next page, go to the vocab page. All right. And it's going to give us our 5 vocab words that are essential to civil rights or support the civil rights lesson. So the 5 prompts or words are civil rights, segregation, civil disobedience, discrimination, and naturalization. So you can use these flip cards. They're more application definitions. I like these definitions down here because they're more literal definitions. So we'll do the matching and then we can use these to fill in the chart for number 2 for vocab. Okay. So if we're in here, so we go through and it says, as a result of citizenship, a person is granted certain civil rights. Okay. So those should be protections by the government. And you're going to click check latest move to make sure it's correct. If it's wrong, you can always fix it. So for example, if I just drag over naturalization and I click it, it's going to say it's wrong. All right, then I can fix it. From the end of the Civil War to civil rights movement, Blake was a common practice across the country to separate whites from other races. That's going to be segregation, right? So separating people in public places based on their race or their ethnicity. All right, the act of blank deliberately means to refuse to obey certain laws or demands of the government. That's going to be civil disobedience. So when I know the law, but I knowingly and willingly don't follow it or break that law. While the civil rights movement occurred in the 1960s, there are acts of blank still happening today. That's going to be discrimination. So as much as we move through time and we've had our civil rights movement stuff, the reality is that addressing discrimination is an ongoing thing. Okay, it's a lifelong thing, and we might think we have one topic handled, then there's going to be something else that needs to be handled in society. So see it as an ever-evolving movement, and not something that we're ever really done with. We're always looking at it and trying to make sure that we're reevaluating and we're making sure that we're addressing groups and members of society, making sure that we are reducing and minimizing discrimination. If someone wants to become a citizen of another country, they must go through naturalization. So the process to become a citizen. So we're going to click the check a whole answer because you want to make sure that this registers, and then we're going to start working on our chart. Any questions? We're good? All right. So there's a couple ways you can do this. All right. You can take the term and type that in your chart and then copy and paste this over. Or I'm going to copy and paste these in the chat. You can copy and paste them from the chat into your chart. So whatever is going to be easiest for you. So here's the first one, civil rights. Okay. So as a result of citizenship, people are granted certain civil rights. And this has obviously been a progression over time, right? When they say we the people and stuff, that was a very limited number of people when our country first was founded. So over time, through legislation and amendments to the Constitution and laws and court cases, we want to expand that to truly include all people of all backgrounds, okay, and stuff. So no matter your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your identity, right, that you are included in those rights and protections. So the second part is going to be then definition in your own words. So I will help you out with this. So it's the rights guaranteed to citizens of a country. And no, citizens and immigrants do not have the same rights. So if I was to move to another country or something like that, you are guaranteed some rights, but most countries have kind of two standards. So there's immigration, or people who are there that are not citizens, they'll have certain rights, and then citizens. And citizens tend to have more rights or guarantees within their country, okay, being an official part of that country. So there are things guaranteed to all people, and then there are specific things only guaranteed to citizens. Okay, segregation. So segregation is, I will put this in there so you can copy and paste that over into your chart. So it's from the end of the Civil War through Civil Rights Movement, and this was the strategic and a lot of states passed laws allowing them to separate people based on their race or their ethnicity. So in a lot of public places, so maybe restaurants, buses, public transportation, venues, schools. And Brown versus Board of Education was the first really big step to desegregating, right? And taking away that rights from states and saying, no, federally, you are being mandated. You are not allowed to do this. You are violating their civil rights. The separation of people based on skin color in public settings. So civil disobedience is the knowingly and willfully not following a law. So sometimes during movements and stuff, we have seen people, take this stand when they feel that just because it's law doesn't mean that it's right, doesn't mean that it's liberty, okay? And so in the name of rights or liberties, they will knowingly and willfully break that law to bring awareness to how that law is violating civil rights or civil liberties. So not following the laws willingly or on purpose. Yeah, so not all states practice segregation. Not all states practice segregation and stuff. So the reason the federal government needed to do this was because states were taking it upon themselves to make the decision. So there were some states that didn't practice segregation, and there were some that did. My mom was in high school in the 60s and 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And so in Louisiana, which very much was a segregated state. So she talks about how first part of high school, it was pretty much all white. And then her junior, senior year, they would bus in students, and stuff like that. So going through the desegregation process and stuff. And she said there was a lot of tension, and it was difficult, and it was, and some people were excited and some people were very resistant. So they needed that federal mandate to get states to push forward. But not every state was doing that. There were some states that were desegregated. Discrimination. So this is, during the civil rights movement, from the Civil War to civil rights movement, that process and push to reduce discrimination. And the reality is that there is no society that is free 100% of discrimination. Why? Because we are imperfect people. No one is perfect. So the goal is to continually make this better. The idea that we'll never have discrimination in any segment of society just is not a reality. We are not a utopian society. I wish, but we are not. So the goal, though, is to continually address where we can and where we see violations and discrimination to make that as good as possible. That's why, again, it's not a deadline. It's not a finish line. It's a process. It's a journey. That's why we're never done, because we are flawed people. We are a flawed system. And sometimes when we pass one legislative, it might actually not meaning to or indeterminately discriminate on another group, Yes, there's lots of groups. They're not perfect people. Really, everyone can be. Teachers, we are not perfect people. So grace to your teachers. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes I get nasty emails from students. You did this. And I'm like, I promise it wasn't on purpose. Like, I didn't meaningfully mark you absent. Like, it was a mistake. Let me know and I'll fix it. That's why it's always good to kill it with kindness. Right, Missy? It's like, we make mistakes. Tell the kids all the time. I'm like, you think I have time to just sit around and think about how I can pick on you? I don't. You give me too much credit. So I'm going to mark them absent today. No. Okay, naturalization. So the process to become a citizen of a country. And this is a very, very complicated process. It takes years and years and years in our country. And actually, this is true of most countries. So I'm not saying that that's right that it takes so long, but I'm saying it's actually quite normal that it's a really long, tedious process. My good friend from childhood, she lives in Copenhagen in Denmark, and she's going to become a citizen there. It's a 7-year process. 7-year process to do it. And in fact, just to get her driver's license, she had to take a language test. She had to take language classes for a year and pass. So I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of scrutiny on us for our citizenship process, which it is absolutely broken. It needs to be streamlined. I'm not defending it, but to say that other countries have it streamlined is absolutely a farce. Most countries, it's actually a very difficult process, and there's a lot of hoops and things you have to go through, and it is complicated. So it is very common for it to be complicated to become a citizen of a country. It's not an easy process in most countries. That is actually quite normal. Whether or not that's good, that then becomes, debatable, but it is actually quite normal for it to be a really tedious process to become a citizen of a country. They don't make it easy. So, all right. So the steps one must go through to become a citizen of a country. Okay. So once you have the chart done, why don't you write vocab for me in the chat? All right. Let me know that you've got these copy and pasted over. This is where we're going to stop for the day. So you want to make sure that before you close this document today that you get this vocab done. Okay. Awesome. Looks like most of you are getting it done. That's great. Okay. And then on Monday, what we'll do is I'll tell you, open up your notebooks. This is what I'm talking about. And then we'll pick up at number 3. And my goal is to get 3, 4, and 5, maybe 6 if we're really good. 3, 4, and 5 for sure done on goal is about half the assignment. And then you'll have to complete the rest. And we'll review for your quiz on Monday as well. Okay. So before I let you go, we looked at civil rights versus civil liberties. Civil rights are things that the government does to help protect us. Civil liberties are protections from the government overreach, okay? We set up and started working on the course arc in the notebook. For tomorrow, Module 0 intro module need to be done. So I gave you time yesterday. They should already be done. If not, get them done, all right? It takes you less than 10 minutes. If you need any help tomorrow or if you want any support tomorrow, please come see me during small group, 9 to 11:45. I don't care when you drop in. And that is NVLA Hall KSG, and I will have that in the announcement tomorrow as well. Monday, we'll continue working on the course arc notebook. We'll look at the limitations of freedom a little bit. So what are those freedoms? Freedom does not always necessarily mean anything goes. And we'll look at some of the historical amendments and movements a little bit more, and then we'll review for your quiz. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. If you need anything, stay behind. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow if you'd like to drop in, or I will see you on Monday. All right, have a great weekend, Missy. Have a great weekend, everybody. If you have any questions on anything, it could be dealing with the lesson or maybe thank you so much, or with attendance or anything like that, let me know. I'm happy to help. Anybody have any questions or anything like that before we go? Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a good day. If you need anything, come see me tomorrow. Anybody have any questions? Yes, tomorrow, 9 to 11:45. The code is in the announcement. Okay. Any questions or anything? All right, I'm going to go. Have a wonderful weekend. If you need anything, come see me tomorrow. All right. Thank you so much.